But first, we are starting with the news, sad news of yet another stabbing. A 12-year-old boy, Leo Ross, was stabbed on Tuesday afternoon as he walked home from school in Birmingham. Knife crime and violence is something that's been the subject of many conversations this week, with the Southport attacker being sentenced today. And reports also of a woman dying after a violent attack in Plymouth last night. So, the question for us all, Nadia, do you feel safe on the streets?
Do you know, it's funny, Mark and I went away a couple of weekends ago and it was so weird because I was walking around and I was saying, nobody here is the least bit worried about anything. You know, there was just such a different atmosphere to where I live, because where I live, I very, very much feel unsafe on the streets from what I see, from what I know that my children's friends and my neighbours and all the things that I know and have heard firsthand that have happened, I find it very scary. And I've said this before, sometimes I feel like I've got a bit agoraphobic. I don't really like walking around. I don't really like going to the park anymore by myself with the dog. Now, I know that's not the same for everybody, but I very much feel that. And also, the problem is, as far as I'm concerned, I don't blame the police. I blame the governments that have ignored problems and I feel like just mushroom out of all control. And sometimes I feel like we're in such a state that I don't know how we're going to get back. So my thing is, and I'd be interested to know what you say, Penny, all the young people that I know that tell me about, you know, this is the third time I've been held up with a knife to take my phone, or when my daughters talk about being harassed on the bus by a bloke or whatever, I always say to them, listen, tell the police. And they go, there's no point and there's nothing they can do, right? And I get that, and I get that, but is it or is it not right that you should... Because I say to them, if you don't log it, you can do it anonymously. What are they going to say? Say, oh, knife crime's down in Peckham.
Yeah.
Because...
And why don't they, Nadia? Because they feel it's hopeless?
I think from the young guys that I know that have been held up, they don't say this, but there's a level of humiliation when you have to back down and you have to hand over your things. These are young boys.
Aren't they also frightened
fear,
of recrimination?
Terrible fear.
Yeah.
And, like, the last time this happened to a friend of my daughter's, I said to him, but they won't know. And he said, oh, no, they filmed it when it was happening and they would... So they are intimidated, they're bullied when they do it, and they really believe that these people have a power far greater than they actually have. So what would you say? Should you report it, whatever?
Well, of course, understandably, you're talking about children and women, the most vulnerable of society that are going to feel this way. Like you're saying, you feel unsafe.
Well, these are young boys.
Women and, children, women and children shouldn't have to feel that way in society. But that makes it even more important because statistically, they will be logged. Every incident that is reported is logged. If it was one single incident, it's very, very hard to gather enough evidence to put that suspect away. However, if there are many, many, many incidents that are reported with a similar description, then it forms a much better picture.
But I think what happens
and then that information could be collaborated, and then
but the people I'm talking about don't want to talk to the police because
I'm just saying
they don't want to add evidence. So can they just log this happened to me and I want nothing else?
It can be anonymous. They don't have to say who they are, but they need to report that crime.
Yeah.
I mean,
and then it will be logged, and then there'll be an incident, and then collectively they can gather more of that evidence around those particular areas. There could be more police presence brought to that area.
I get what Nadia is saying, though. I mean, if you're, let's say, a young person, and obviously you're experiencing a young person, and it's about self-preservation, after all, isn't it? And if you feel that, as you say, Jane, there's going to be repercussions or recriminations, then you are unlikely to put your head above the parapet because you're frightened of what's going to happen. I mean, London does, or parts of London have a real issue. I mean, I'm listening to this, and I mean, I know, Nadia, we've spoken about it, and I absolutely understand how you feel. It contrasts with my experience, I have to say. And I mean, you know, Glasgow, I live in Glasgow, it was famously the murder capital of the world for quite a long time, and that's no joke. I don't feel that sense.
So what's
as I'm
changed?
going about,
Why
but I'm
is
not
it-
trying to deny
But what's changed?
that happened.
What made it not be the murder capital?
Well, and that's...
Or is it just that somewhere else has overtaken it?
No, it's not, and I think that is really where we get to it, because obviously the police response is really important, but we need to get to the root cause of this.
Exactly.
You know, why are we seeing these hotspots? And London, I think, the knife crime in London is way above anywhere else in the country. Of course, this young boy, Leo Ross, that was stabbed in Birmingham. I'm not saying it doesn't exist there. So why are we having these hotspots? And in Glasgow, they did take very definite steps to try and reduce the level of violence.
I think a lot of it's to do with boy gangs, to do with gangs and all of that.
And again, Glasgow was the gang culture.
You know, we'll have
as well.
people watching this show now who live in a nice village somewhere, and they'll be like, this is completely alien conversation to me. I walk around my area perfectly fine, don't ever feel
Depends
unsafe.
what streets you're on.
But, you know, if you live in an inner city, and if I had boys, if I had sons, I would be fearing for them far more than I would have done, like, even when I was a young woman. For me, I wouldn't say I feel unsafe, and I certainly don't I don't worry about violence. For me, it's theft. Theft is a huge problem
Which
in London.
does involve violence a lot of the time.
Well, it does involve violence, or they're just... So I'm always sort of, like, aware. I don't get my... And I'm always saying to my daughters, don't have your phone out on the street. But that annoys me. I think you should be able to have your phone out on the street without...
My Maddie, after Christmas, she just was using her AirPods for the first time. She was like, her friend waved her. She was putting her AirPod back in. She goes, Mum, it was unbelievable. She goes, it was like magic. It was just gone out of my hand. This boy just bumped up onto the pavement on his bike and took it out of her hand, and she was like... And I said, but that is awful. You do know that. So she goes, oh, well, it happens to so many people. I said, no, but it's still awful.
Yeah.
You've actually been mugged.
There is
And we have very little... I mean, I know where you are, but we have very little visible policing in certain areas of London, and I think that's a huge deterrent. And
it is,
if I go on
absolutely.
neighbourhood apps now, I've stopped looking at them because everybody's on there going... My car's been stolen, this has been broken into. And none of them bother...
is important.
None of them bother ringing the police because they say even when they've got amazing evidence, the police just close it.
Well, it's not so much the police. I mean, as you say, it goes up the ladder to the most biggest crimes. And, of course, when it does come to the safety of someone's life, you know, the City of London, we have Operation Reframe, where there's a welfare tent at Liverpool Street Station for the safety of any member of public, particularly women that feel vulnerable, that want to ask questions, that point out particular streets that are dark, that maybe have been spiked. So there is a lot
Can we have a bit of that in South London,
There is a lot of reinforcement.
Bring it around my way.
Tents on every street corner there.
Yeah.
We just need more funding, I guess, the police in general.
Well, yeah, and again, I think we do have to look at the root causes and ask why so many young people are getting involved in violence and are getting involved in theft, and are we putting enough into trying diverting them into more positive lifestyles? You know, we've had a real problem with public services over a long time now, so are we going to put the money into it? Because
better schools,
that's what's going to move things on.
Yeah.